the annoying virus and the reluctant neighbor. The glitch started subtly. A flicker in the corner of the screen, a brief stutter in the editing software. Maya ignored it at first, blaming her tired eyes after hours of wrestling with Premiere Pro. But then the rendering times ballooned, and yesterday's backup file was corrupted, replaced with a string of gibberish characters that mocked her efforts. Panic bloomed in her chest as she tried to open other project files. Each one a digital graveyard. "Liam," she yelled, her voice cracking with frustration. He appeared in the doorway, a half-eaten sandwich in hand. "Everything all right?" "Sounds like someone's strangling a cat." "My computer's possessed. It's eating my film project." Liam, ever the tech-savvy friend, spent the next 2 hours hunched over her laptop, muttering arcane phrases about firewalls and malware scans. He ran every diagnostic tool he could find, his brow furrowed in concentration. The scent of his sandalwood cologne mingled with the acrid smell of overheating electronics. Finally, he leaned back, defeated. "It's bad, Maya. Really bad. Some kind of ransomware, I think. It's encrypted half your drive. I can't crack it." He looked genuinely apologetic, the usual smirk absent from his face. Maya sank into her chair, the weight of her ruined project crushing her. The film, a culmination of months of work, was due next week. Failure wasn't an option. "There's gotta be something we can do," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Liam sighed. "There's George. Next door. He used to work in IT. He's probably forgotten more about computers than I'll ever know." He paused, a flicker of reluctance in his eyes. "But he's a bit intense." Maya knew of George Thompson, the quiet, older man who lived next door. They'd exchanged polite greetings a few times, but he always seemed distant, shrouded in an air of dignified solitude. He was a widower, she knew, and rumors swirled about his past: a coding prodigy, a former government analyst, a reclusive genius. He always seemed like someone she shouldn't bother. But what choice did she have? "Okay," she said, her voice tight with nerves. "Let's ask him." Liam winced. "You sure?" "I can try something else. Maybe brute force it through the night." She shook her head. "No. We need an expert." The walk to George's apartment felt like a mile. Each step echoed in the suddenly quiet hallway. She could hear her own heartbeat thumping in her ears. Taking a deep breath, she raised her hand and knocked. The sound reverberated through the heavy wooden door, a stark contrast to the gentle hum of her own apartment. A moment of silence stretched, taut and expectant. Then, the click of a lock. The door opened inward, revealing George Thompson. He was taller than she remembered, his frame still strong despite his age. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, were sharp and intelligent, assessing her with a quiet curiosity. He wore a faded flannel shirt and reading glasses perched on his nose, a book marking his place in his hand. "Maya, isn't it?" he said, his voice a low rumble. "What can I do for you?" "Tech wizardry and model airplanes." George didn't panic. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he pulled a chair from beside a drafting table cluttered with wires and miniature components, and, with a surprising gentleness, gestured for Maya to sit. His fingers, long and surprisingly nimble, danced across the keyboard, pulling up a command prompt window filled with cascading green text that meant absolutely nothing to her. "Right," he murmured, more to himself than to Maya. "Looks like a polymorphic ransomware variant, likely piggybacking on that freeware video editor you downloaded." Maya winced. "I knew I shouldn't have. I just needed it for that one project." He didn't look up. "Easy to do. They're getting craftier. This one's particularly nasty, burying itself deep in the kernel." "Let's see," he typed rapidly, a blur of keystrokes that echoed in the surprisingly quiet apartment. While he worked, Maya took the opportunity to actually look around. The apartment was a stark contrast to her own explosion of colorful textiles and mismatched furniture. Everything here was meticulously organized, almost sterile. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, crammed with thick volumes that smelled faintly of old paper and leather. Titles like Gödel, Escher, Bach, and The Selfish Gene hinted at the owner's intellectual pursuits. Interspersed among the books were framed photographs. Not family portraits, but vibrant landscapes, a snow-capped Himalayan peak, a bustling marketplace in Marrakesh, the aurora borealis shimmering above a dark Finnish forest. Each image was a portal to a world she hadn't even dreamed of. On the drafting table, amidst the chaos of wires and circuit boards, several meticulously crafted model airplanes sat perched on stands. A biplane with a tiny, whirring propeller. A sleek, futuristic jet. They looked like something out of a museum. George finally stopped typing. "Okay," he said, his voice pulling her back to the present. "I've isolated the virus. It's encrypting your files as we speak, but I've managed to grab the decryption key before it went fully operational." He pointed to the screen, a mess of code suddenly resolving itself into something resembling recognizable English. "Now, I need to write a script to remove it and decrypt your files. It'll take a couple of hours, maybe more." He glanced at Maya, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "You can stay or, well, I understand if you'd rather not." "Stay? Of course, I'll stay," Maya blurted out, a little too quickly. The prospect of leaving, of returning to her own infected laptop and the mounting anxiety it represented, was far less appealing than staying here, in this strange, quiet space, watching George work his tech wizardry. Besides, she was genuinely curious now. About the books, the photos, the model airplanes. About George himself. Old school tech and shared laughs. George squinted at the laptop screen, his brow furrowed deeper than the lines etched by time. "This is stubborn. More deeply embedded than I initially thought." He pushed his glasses higher on his nose, the movement causing a faint squeak. Maya perched on the edge of his worn armchair, nervously twisting a strand of her hair. The digital battlefield unfolding on the screen was a language she barely understood. "Stubborn good or stubborn bad?" "Stubborn bad," George replied, not taking his eyes off the code scrolling past. He muttered something about rootkits and kernel-level access, words that sounded like they belonged in a sci-fi movie. After a moment of silence, he sighed and leaned back, the chair creaking in protest. "Reminds me of my early days, dealing with punch cards." Maya blinked. "Punch cards?" A smile, a genuine, almost boyish smile, softened the stern lines of his face. "Oh, yes. Back when computers were the size of a small car, and had less processing power than your phone. We programmed with punch cards. One wrong hole, one tiny imperfection, and the whole program would crash." He chuckled, and Maya found herself relaxing a little. "I remember one time, I was working on a particularly complex algorithm trying to predict the optimal placement of, well, never you mind what. Important stuff. Anyway, I'd spent weeks on it, meticulously punching each card. Came time to run it, and the whole system threw an error. Hours I spent debugging, checking every single card. Finally, I found it. One tiny, misplaced hole. Punched it myself, probably distracted by something. Cost me 3 days of work." He shook his head, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "The worst part? It wasn't even a crucial part of the program. It was a line of code that told the computer to display the phrase, 'Have a nice day,' at the end of the run." Maya burst out laughing. The image of a younger, equally intense George tearing his hair out over a misplaced hole that only affected a digital greeting was unexpectedly endearing. The sound of her laughter seemed to surprise him, and his smile widened. He cleared his throat. "Right. Well, this isn't quite as amusing. This virus, it's burrowed deep. I'll need to run a full system scan and probably rebuild the master boot record. It's going to take a while." He turned back to the laptop, his expression serious once more. "Probably best if you leave it with me. Come back tomorrow." Movie nights and unexpected common ground. The progress bar crawled across the screen, tauntingly slow. So, Maya said, fidgeting with the frayed edge of a throw pillow. Now what? George, surprisingly, didn't retreat into his usual silence. Now, he said, adjusting his glasses, we watch a film. Something analog. He gestured toward a stack of DVDs beside the ancient television set. I have a rather extensive collection. Maya's eyes widened. Like old movies? He nodded. Pre-CGI. When special effects involved actual effort and imagination. He picked up a case. Citizen Kane. Maya wrinkled her nose. Too important feeling. Got anything lighter? George considered for a moment, then produced Casablanca. Classic romance. Intrigue. And Humphrey Bogart. As the opening credits rolled, George dimmed the lights. Maya found herself relaxing, the anxieties of the broken computer momentarily forgotten. The black and white images flickered on the screen, the dialogue sharp and witty. George, she noticed, seemed to know every line, occasionally muttering along under his breath. There was a comfortable silence between them, punctuated only by the movie and the whirring of the computer working in the background. By the time Rick said his famous goodbye, the virus scan was complete. Nothing major, George announced, clicking through the results. Just a few unwanted guests. All neutralized. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you, George. Seriously. You're a lifesaver. It was nothing, he mumbled, already turning back to the television. Perhaps a game. He gestured to a shelf overflowing with board games. Maya's eyes lit up. You play board games? He nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. Chess, Go, Settlers of Catan, a bit of everything, really. They settled on a game of Scrabble. Maya, usually quick with words, found herself strangely flustered, struggling to form even the simplest words while George, with an almost unsettling focus, built elaborate networks of tiles, scoring triple-word scores with seemingly effortless ease. You're good, Maya conceded, laughing. Strategy, he said simply, placing a Q on a triple-letter score. It's all about spatial reasoning and vocabulary. As they were packing the game away, George's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. Evelyn, he sighed. Excuse me. He stepped out onto the small balcony. Maya could only catch snippets of the conversation, just helping a neighbor, no, I'm fine, don't worry, I had dinner. When he came back in, his expression was clouded. Evelyn worries, he explained, not quite meeting Maya's eye. She thinks I shouldn't exert myself. She cares about you, Maya said softly. That's a good thing. He nodded slowly. Yes. It is. He paused. Thank you, Maya. For the company. It was pleasant. Anytime, George, Maya said, gathering her things. Maybe we can finish Casablanca next time. Perhaps, he said, a hint of a smile returning. As she walked back to her apartment, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. A fragile connection had been forged, built on shared interests and unexpected common ground. A brush of hands and a fluttering heart. The Gordian knot of wires snaked across George's workbench, a chaotic monument to the virus that held Maya's laptop hostage. She chewed on her thumbnail, feeling utterly useless. George, however, moved with a focused precision, his brow furrowed in concentration as he traced a particularly stubborn cable. Okay, he murmured, more to himself than her. If we reroute the power supply through the auxiliary bus, we might be able to bypass the corrupted sector. Maya blinked. Right. She hadn't understood a word. Still, she felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest, a fragile flower pushing through the hard-packed soil of her anxiety. George, for all his gruff exterior, was incredibly patient. Here, he said, pointing to a thick, black cable. Hold this steady while I detach the connector. Just a gentle grip. He reached for the cable at the same moment she did. Their hands brushed. It wasn't a lingering touch, barely a graze, but the effect was instantaneous. A jolt like static electricity shot up Maya's arm, leaving a tingling trail in its wake. Her heart, which had been beating a steady, if nervous, rhythm, suddenly decided to stage a drum solo. She snatched her hand back as if burned. Her cheeks flushed, and she avoided George's gaze, focusing instead on the intricate patterns on the workbench's surface, swirling knots in the aged wood. Sorry, she mumbled, the word barely audible. George seemed equally flustered. He cleared his throat, his usually steady hands now fumbling slightly with the connector. No problem. Just need a firm grip. These things can be tricky. He didn't look at her. The air in the small workshop, already thick with the scent of ozone and dust, seemed to grow heavier, charged with an unspoken energy. Maya could feel the heat radiating from her face, and she desperately hoped he couldn't see the chaotic thoughts swirling behind her eyes. What was that? Was it just surprise? Or something more? He finally managed to detach the connector with a sharp click. Got it, he said, his voice a little higher than usual. He busied himself with a soldering iron, the tiny bursts of light momentarily distracting her from the turmoil within. Maya took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. So, she said, forcing a casual tone, auxiliary bus, huh? Is that like a spare tire for the power supply? George glanced up, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Was it amusement? Annoyance? She couldn't tell. Something like that, he said, turning back to his work. The soldering iron hissed, filling the air with the acrid smell of melting metal. The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the rhythmic clicking of George's tools and the frantic hammering of Maya's heart. She knew she should say something, break the tension, but the words seemed to have vanished, leaving her tongue-tied and her mind a blank slate. All she could think about was the brief, electric touch of his hand against hers. Confused feelings and guilty thoughts. The ceramic mug, chipped at the rim, radiated warmth, a futile attempt to soothe the butterflies stampeding through Maya's core. Each mental replay of George ignited a blush. She'd spent her morning orchestrating her wardrobe, a chromatic and seasonal ballet usually reserved for peak ennui. Today, however, it was a frantic exercise in avoidance. Her brief foray outdoors to collect the mail proved disastrous. There he was, George, pruning his roses. The air, thick with their cloying perfume, became a suffocating reminder of their conversation. Eyes downcast, she managed a mumbled morning, before practically bolting back inside, his gentle reply, "Good morning, Maya," echoing in her wake. Later, sprawled on the sofa, she stabbed at Liam's number on her phone. "I think I'm losing it," she blurted the moment he answered. "Rodriguez, that's hardly a revelation," Liam retorted, the staccato burst of virtual gunfire punctuating his words. "But do elaborate. Has the landlord finally rumbled your clandestine iguana?" "No, it's George." The digital warfare abruptly ceased. "George? As in, the man who looks like he could translate cuneiform with a paperclip, George?" "Yeah, him." Maya clutched the mug tighter. "I think I might be attracted to him." The confession felt alien, almost illicit, as it tumbled out. A prolonged silence stretched between them, broken only by the low thrum of Liam's computer. "Right," he finally responded, his voice deliberately neutral. "Well, that's different." "Different?" "Liam, it's bonkers. He's practically ancient." "What's wrong with me?" A wave of shame washed over her. She envisioned her mother's pursed lips, her grandmother's tuteing disapproval. The thought prickled her skin. "Hey, easy. No judgment here. Just processing. He does have that aura. Quiet intensity, the kind that suggests he knows where all the missing socks go." "Exactly. And he's kind. He actually listened." Gave a damn about my idiotic tech problems. Maya squeezed her eyes shut. But it's wrong, isn't it? It has to be. Listen, Liam said, his tone gentler now. Emotions are a minefield. They rarely make sense. Maybe you're transferring something. Maybe you're just starved for connection. Maybe he bathes in some alluring elixir, I have no idea. But if it unsettles you, if it feels off, you need to navigate that. He paused. Look, Maya, you're the most unconventional person I know. But this is uncharted territory, even for you. Just tread carefully, okay? Don't leap before you look. Regret, Maya echoed, the word a lead weight in her stomach. That's all I taste right now. Regret and utter bewilderment. Addressing the tension. The scent of lavender from Maya's overflowing window box drifted through the open doorway, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of soldering flux that usually permeated George's apartment. He watched her from the corner of his eye, a quiet observer, as she meticulously arranged a cluster of mismatched mugs on the newly built shelving unit. Each placement seemed fraught with deliberation, a miniature crisis of aesthetic proportion. Something wrong, Maya? He finally asked, the question hanging in the air like the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. She jumped, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Wrong? No. Why would anything be wrong? The mugs wobbled precariously as she adjusted them again, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. George leaned back in his chair, the springs groaning in protest. He hadn't missed the way she'd been avoiding his gaze the past few days, the stilted conversation, the almost frantic energy she seemed to be expending on everything. It was a far cry from the easy camaraderie they'd shared before. You seem different, he ventured, choosing his words carefully. More agitated, perhaps. Maya busied herself with a stray piece of packing tape, ripping it into tiny shreds. Just busy. Midterms are coming up, and I'm juggling a million things, you know how it is. Her voice was higher than usual, almost brittle. He didn't push, not immediately. Instead, he rose and walked over to the window, his gaze fixed on the bustling street below. The sounds of the city car horns, distant sirens, snippets of conversation usually faded into white noise, but today they felt sharp, intrusive. That may be, he said, his voice low, but I also think something is bothering you. Something between us. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Maya stopped shredding the tape, her fingers still. He could feel her gaze on his back, hesitant and uncertain. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. It's weird, right? Us? I mean, you're. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. George turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Older, he supplied, a hint of wry amusement in his voice. Maya winced. I didn't mean it like that. It's just unexpected. I never thought, well, I just. She gestured vaguely, her words failing her. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. The lavender scent intensified, a sweet, heady aroma that filled his senses. I enjoy your company, Maya, he said softly, his gaze unwavering. More than I have enjoyed anyone's company in a very long time. But I am also aware of the disparity. He paused, searching for the right words. I wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable. Honest conversation in the dark. The last line of code stubbornly refused to cooperate. Maya groaned, rubbing her tired eyes. I swear this thing is mocking me. Suddenly, the hum of her laptop died, the screen going black. The overhead lights flickered and then surrendered, plunging the apartment into darkness. Great, she muttered, pushing back from her desk. Just perfect. A soft knock echoed from the hallway. Maya. You okay? George's voice was a low rumble. Power outage, she called out, fumbling for her phone. The flashlight app illuminated a chaotic landscape of scattered papers and half-empty coffee cups. She found a stubby candle and lighter in a kitchen drawer, the flame casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. George appeared in the doorway, holding a more substantial lantern. Its warm glow filled the small space. Brought some backup. Power grids probably overloaded with the heat. He set the lantern on the table, its light revealing the concern etched on his face. Maya managed a weak smile. Thanks, George. You're a lifesaver again. She slumped onto the couch. I was finally making progress, too. He settled into the armchair opposite her. So, the coding project. Yeah. It's daunting. More than I thought it would be. She traced patterns on the worn fabric of the couch. I feel like I'm drowning sometimes. Everyone else seems to understand everything so easily. George was quiet for a moment. Everyone feels that way, Maya. At least, everyone who's trying to learn something new and challenging. The candlelight flickered, casting an intimate glow. Maya shivered, not entirely from the coolness of the evening. It's more than just the coding, I think. It's everything. I feel so lost. Like I'm supposed to have it all figured out by now, but I don't even know what I want. 19 is a difficult age, George said softly. It's a time of exploration, of trying on different versions of yourself. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to have all the answers. She looked up at him, the shadows dancing in her eyes. But you seem so sure of everything. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. Hardly. I've just had a lot more time to make mistakes and learn from them. And to realize that most of the things I worried about weren't worth the energy. A longer silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackling of the candle. George, Maya began hesitantly, do you ever regret anything? He hesitated, his gaze drifting to the flickering flame. Regret is a heavy burden, Maya. I try not to dwell on it. But I do sometimes wonder if I closed myself off too much, too early. If I missed out on experiences, on connections, because I was afraid. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a gentle sadness. You shouldn't make the same mistake. You should be out there experiencing life, building relationships with people your own age. Don't let fear hold you back. Maya's heart sank a little. Was this his way of telling her that their connection was inappropriate? She swallowed hard, trying to hide her disappointment. I know, she mumbled, looking away. It's just easier sometimes, talking to you. I appreciate that, Maya. I truly do. But you deserve to have friends, partners, who are on the same path as you. People who understand your world, your struggles. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her, sadness, understanding, and a strange sense of relief. He was right, of course. But the thought of not having these quiet, honest conversations with him left a hollow ache in her chest. The candle sputtered. Friendship restored and a tech-savvy future. The low hum of George's ancient computer filled the small apartment. Maya held her breath, watching as lines of code scrolled across the monitor, a language she couldn't even begin to decipher. George, hunched over the keyboard, tapped away with surprising agility for a man his age. His brow was furrowed in concentration, lips moving silently as he muttered to himself. Finally, he leaned back, a flicker of a smile playing on his lips. Done, he announced, his voice raspy from disuse. Nasty little bugger, that one. Burrowed deep. But it's gone now. Clean as a whistle. Maya exhaled, relief washing over her. Oh, George, thank you. Seriously, thank you so much. I was terrified I'd lost everything. You saved me. She felt a surge of gratitude so intense it surprised her. She impulsively reached out and squeezed his arm. I don't know what I would have done without you. George, visibly flustered by the physical contact, cleared his throat. Just a bit of digital housekeeping, really. Nothing to it. He turned back to the computer, already powering it down. No, it was a huge deal, Maya insisted. An idea sparked in her mind. Hey, my sister gave me this new tablet for my birthday, but I haven't even taken it out of the box. I'm so bad with new tech. Would you maybe want to help me set it up? As a thank you, I could make us some of my world-famous brownies. George hesitated, then a glint of curiosity appeared in his eyes. A tablet, you say? What make is it? Within an hour, the tablet was out of the box and George, with Maya assisting mostly by holding things and asking questions, was navigating the initial setup. He moved with surprising ease through the menus, explaining things clearly and patiently. As he worked, Maya noticed a framed photograph on a nearby shelf, a younger George, beaming, surrounded by 3 small children. Are those your grandchildren? She asked gently. George's face softened. Yes. Evelyn's children. I haven't seen them in a while. Maya's heart ached for him. Maybe you could video call them. We could set it up right now. This tablet probably has some fancy video conferencing app. She navigated to the App Store, downloaded a video call program, and showed George how to find his contacts. George watched, his eyes wide with wonder as Maya guided him through the steps. His fingers trembled slightly as he tapped on Evelyn's name. The screen flickered, then a pixelated image of Evelyn appeared, her face etched with concern. Dad? Is that really you? What's going on? Evelyn, George said, his voice choked with emotion. It's me. I'm trying this newfangled contraption. Maya helped me. Evelyn's expression softened as she saw Maya in the background. Then 2 small faces crowded into the frame, a boy and a girl, both with George's eyes. Grandpa, they shrieked in unison. Grandpa George. George's face lit up, radiating pure joy. He spent the next few minutes chatting with his grandchildren, his voice animated, his eyes sparkling. He showed them his apartment, his computer, even his dusty collection of stamps. Evelyn watched the whole scene, a wave of relief washing over her. She could see a light in her father's eyes she hadn't seen in years. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to change.